Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And welcome to Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Concert for Hope with Genuis. A few housekeeping notes. In the event of an emergency, please take note of the exit nearest you. They are behind me on either side, through the chapel, and at the back of the church. Kindly take a moment to make certain that your cell phone is silent or turned off. If you should need the restrooms, they are located off of the gathering space to the right side. And also in the gathering space, you will find CDs and DVDs available to you. Simply leave a donation. Now let me introduce Jack and Eric, who will tell you about the National Catholic Youth Conference coming up this month. Midway through the concert, the youth will be passing a basket if you would like to make a donation. Now, Jack will tell you more about the conference.
Hello, my name is Jack Gilbert. I'm one of the several youth from the Westfield community who will be traveling next week to Indianapolis, Indiana for the National Youth Conference. Over 20,000 high school age youth from around the country will gather at the Lucas Oil Stadium for this 3-day faith-filled event for youth. The young people from our community attending this event have been fundraising to help defray the cost for attending the conference, which includes registration fees, travel, food, and accommodations. We are very grateful to Eric Genuis and the musicians for bringing this wonderful concert of hope to our area and giving us this opportunity to take up a free will offering to help with the cost of attending the youth conference. Midway through the concert, we will pass a basket throughout the church for donations. Checks may be made payable to OLBS. Also, in the concert program, there is an opportunity to make a donation directly to Eric and his musicians in support for their concerts of hope. On behalf of the youth who will be attending the National Youth Conference from our area, thank you so much for your support.
And now let me introduce Eric Genuis. Please give him a welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I can't think of a more worthy cause than the Eucharistic Congress, especially for the youth. I think that is just tremendous. I am so happy to perform for you today. My name is Eric Genuis. And just a couple of things, we're going to get right into the music. I just want to go over a couple of logistics. Number one, roughly 25 years ago or so, I devoted a good part of my life to performing music in dark places. So I have played close to 1,500 shows in prisons and rehab centers. Last night we played at a rehab centers, but close to 1,500 shows in prisons. Why? I'll get into that in a little while, but as long as they keep letting me out of prison, I keep going back. Friends, it's just great. You know what? It doesn't always go as smooth as you think. You know, tensions when you're performing in a prison can get really hot, really quick. I was once performing in Michigan, and out of nowhere, this one guy just yells out, "What makes you come in here and play for us?" Well, now everything's very tense. Isn't that amazing? One statement. The only way to diffuse that sometimes is humor. So I just thought, well, you see, friend, I told him, I was on my way to the convent. I made a wrong turn, and here I am. And he said, yeah, me too. Crazy. Friends, I have played Death Row, Texas 4 times. I'm about to do it my 5th time in April. I've played Death Row, Arizona a couple times, which was very special the last time, because a gentleman was executed 2 weeks after we performed there. I got to hug him and just sort of, he was very gracious and very grateful. It was beautiful. So, I'll talk about why we go into those places and why we do the work we do as the concert goes on. I have 3 musicians I'm very honored to have perform the music today. So we have one from violinist, cellist, and a vocalist. Ladies and gentlemen, without exaggeration, these 3 young people can solo on any stage in the world. They are not good, they are phenomenal. And so I'm very, very honored. So when we go into prisons and we go, like last night, we were at a rehab center in New York where they suffer from drug and alcohol addiction. And at the end of the show, those men stood up and roared because these musicians are so good. Okay, the last thing I was going to say is all the music you're going to hear today is music that I have written, music that I have composed, if you like it. If you don't like it, I didn't compose it. She did. Okay, friends, this first piece is a piano, violin, cello trio. This piece is called Rebellion. Here we go. loud. I just tell them to call the cops. Well, just before we introduce the next piece, I just talk a little bit about my work. So I go in and play, for inmates and those who suffer from drug and alcohol addiction. Friends, I have a beautiful daughter with Down syndrome. She'll never finish a sentence in this life, never. And so my daughter is easily forgotten. Nobody comes over, Anastasia, let's go for dinner. Anastasia, let's go and have some coffee. She never gets invites. She never gets asked out. Nobody asks her opinion for anything. The message I'm really trying to give is that there's a lot of people in our culture that are easily forgotten. When you think about musicians at their level, they should be playing in concert halls and building their brand so that when they're older, they build their legacy. There's somebody at the back writing reviews about them. And then when they write reviews, they write good reviews, they play bigger halls, and then they make more money, and then they write better reviews, and they play bigger halls and make more money, and they build their brand. When we go on death row, you know who knows that we're on death row? Us, a few of the guards, and the inmates, and that's it. There's no brand, there's no legacy, there's no fortune, there's no building anything. But why do it? Because there's meaning to doing things to people who are easily forgotten. That's why. Those inmates, the hundreds of thousands of inmates throughout the country, are easily forgotten. Playing on death row, those guys are in dark cages and they're there 23 to 24 hours a day. You'll never hear of them, they'll never do anything profound. So number one, I believe in them. Number two, I believe in my great musicians. And number three, I believe in the impact of music. People say, it's nice, Eric, you go in and you entertain them for a couple hours. I'm not leaving my family to entertain anybody. I go in because I firmly believe that music is incredibly impactful, which kind of is a bit of a concern when you think about, we live in a day and time now, unlike any other time in history, where our young people have absolute, full access to the world library of music. We've never had that. We've never had that. And we don't even ask, is that good? Because the amount of vulgarity that's coming out in a lot of the music is brutal. Like I was playing, in a grade school, and these 2 third graders came up to me and they said, oh, can we help you tear down? And I said, you know what? I said, there's a very famous song right now. Do you know it? I didn't even have that question out of my mouth, and those girls joined hands and started bopping and sang that song full vulgarity, 100%. And the question is that good? Well, let's see. Confucius, thousands of years ago, said the following: if you want to know the morality of a nation, let me hear the music. That's what he felt about the impact of music. Plato, we base a lot of our laws and our civilization on the philosophies of Plato. This is what Plato said: if you want to govern a nation, you do not need the laws, you need the music. Isn't that incredible? That's what he felt about music. If he feels that music is that powerful, then it is a concern what those 2 little girls are listening to. If music is just, oh, anything goes, then let them listen to whatever they want. But clearly, the greatest thinkers in history didn't think so. And of all those sort of definitions about music, I'm going to share with you one of the most impactful encounters I've ever had. So I'm playing in a youth prison for 300 15-year-old kids that are all been tried and convicted as adults, which means they're all going away for 30 plus years. What does a 15-year-old kid know about 30 years? Nothing. At the end of the show, the leader in the room was sitting right here, and he stood up and he said, can I hear that violin alone? And she played. The boy put his hand over his heart, threw his head back, and wept. And he said, that violin's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. Why have I never heard it before? It's a great question. If we understood about the impact of beauty and what it does to the person, like another thing Plato said, he said music is a moral law. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and a charm and a gaiety to life and to everything. He felt beauty was so important to give to civilization. If we felt that, we would have given that kid beauty when he was in a classroom 8 hours a day. He knows everything about rap and hip-hop and heavy metal, screamo metal, punk rock, acid rock, alternative rock, grunge rock, country. He knows nothing about about beauty that elevates him. Friends, that's why I threw away the brand. I will give up 100 brands to play for that child. When I am on my deathbed, I am not going to care about my brand, but I sure am going to care about that kid. So that's why I go into these places and play. So I want to entertain you this afternoon, but far more than that, I want to write music that brings hope and joy and inspiration. Okay, this next piece is a sung piece. It's a vocal piece, but there's no words. I wanted to write a piece of music that showed the beauty of the human voice without distraction. So it's a duo with our singer and our violinist. The main themes goes between the two, but there's a lot of counter melodies in the cello that are wonderful. So a great way to listen to this piece, isolate all three. This piece is called Promise. Here we go. So I often wonder, when I go into a lot of those places, there's a lot of men who feel a ton of despair and discouragement and guilt, as though they're not worthy of anything. So I got a quick story for you. I was playing on death row in Texas, and they have pods where there's 60 guys in a pod. So I'm playing to 60 guys. We are behind bars playing, and they are in their cells about 100 feet. Now, at times like this, in between pieces, they let me in. So I'm going in there, and I'm with the men. The only thing separating us is their cell door. And there's grates. So they would put their finger through the grate, and I'd shake their finger like I'm shaking their hand. They'd put up their hand, and I'll high-five them. They'll put up their fist, and I'll fist bump them, and we'll talk. And then I'll lower the mic and just say, "So where are you from? Tell me about your family." And then I'll go to the next guy. And I sort of did the math, if you will, and I made room to go to each man twice. So the first time, they're all up and they're all trying to look, because it's kind of an awkward setting. They're trying to look and see a concert, but through their window. So maybe they can see part of the cellist or part of the violinist. And so I give my violinist usually a very long chord and have her walk so that everybody can see her play. Now I got to everybody, and they're all up at their window, and they're talking, and we're having a great time. And then I got to the last guy, who's not even 30. But he was sitting on his bed, didn't want to engage, didn't want to talk. And I thought, okay. So I went and played my next song, and I just said, "I'm coming around again. You're the last guy I'll see before the end of the show." And I just sort of joked, "I hope you have more to say." I mean, he wasn't even looking. He was just sort of looking off into space. I went and did everybody again. The next time I went there, he was up, putting his finger through. I'm shaking his finger, all that. I go to leave to play the last song of the concert. He goes, come back. So I come back and talk more. Not even 30. And then after that, I went down and we played the last song, and I'm packing to leave. And the organizer came and said, "That's incredible." I said, "What's incredible?" He said, 3 years ago, that young man, tried to challenge his case. And he wanted to take his death row sentence and go from death to life. So he'd spend life in prison, but not to be executed. And he lost. So since then, he just wants it over. He's just sitting on his bed. He will not talk to his lawyer, will not talk to the chaplain, will not talk to the warden, won't talk to his brother inmates, won't talk to anybody. He only gets up to pick up his food and to shower, and that's all. Nobody even sees him off the bed. And the fact that he was up there sobbing and high-fiving was new life. Friends, that's why I go in. If I can bring a world-class violinist and a world-class cellist to uplift their life and to remind them of their humanity, I'll do that all day long. You know what? This talk and this concert isn't really about prisons at all. I truly believe in our culture, there's so many who suffer and struggle with despair and discouragement and hopelessness and loneliness. And I want to do all I can to bring the music of these great performers and uplift us all and remind us all how truly profound our dignity is. Because we're in a church, and I don't get this freedom all the time, I will say that there is an unspeakable, immeasurable, untouchable, beautiful, undescribable, complex, mystical, sublime dignity that we all have. It's got nothing to do with earning it, it's just who we are. And that we're made in the image of our Lord. And that profound reality gives us such a great dignity. And that's the hope, is to bring beauty to remind the world of who we really are. This piece, friends, is called Redemption. Now, musically, it's a fun piece to listen to. There are two main themes. The first is in the cello, which represents the struggle of redemption. Sometimes we have to overcome different things in our own life to live our higher life. I have to overcome my temper to live a higher life. Okay. Overcome your temper, fight your temper. You'll win battles, you'll lose battles. Stay in the fight. There's always merit in that fight. And then the second theme is in the violin. 5 seconds later, it comes up right away, and it represents the glory of redemption. Now, friends, you're going to hear these themes passed back and forth, the violin and the cello, but the magic is when those two themes are played together. Why? The magic is when they're played together because sometimes the glory of redemption is realized through the suffering. Suffering is probably the only thing we all share. Young, old, rich, poor, successful or not. For me to earn, to raise money to do all my concerts in all these prisons, sometimes I play in movie stars' homes and they suffer. It's the only thing we all have in common, but that's not always bad. Have you ever gone through something and thought, this is so painful, I don't even know if I can keep breathing, but then you come out of it and you say, oh, but I learned so much through that. I learned more about myself, about love, about life, about perseverance, about commitment that only the intensity of suffering can teach. Sometimes suffering is that brutal, ruthless, relentless, merciless, but honest teacher. And so this piece, friends, is called Redemption, because when I think about my friend who was on death row there, I think, who is not worthy of redemption? The beauty of our faith is that they say there's one thing God cannot do. He can't stop pursuing us out of perfect love. Well, then he's pursuing my friend on death row, so who am I to give up on him? So friends, this is a piece called Redemption, for we are all worthy of that redemption. Here we go. Listen to those two themes. It makes the piece so much more fun to listen to. Here we go. Thank you, friends. This next piece is a spirit. Oh, yes. While they're doing this wonderful thing here, are there any questions, comments, thoughts, accusations while they're passing this around? Anything at all, friends?
Marvelous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am? Do I only compose on the piano? I compose sometimes on the piano, sometimes not on the piano. Just in my head. And, you know, as I get older, the memory fades. So when an idea comes, I have to get it down. I stop life. I pull over on the highway. I do everything. And it's kind of like a flood of ideas. So if I'm composing, and at any given time, I may be composing 10 pieces. And when ideas come, I absolutely have to get them down. But when they come, here's when sort of a lot of ideas come, it's just when I put myself in that environment. So, at 8 o'clock at night, very often my wife will come up, I'll be, in my studio just playing, just because I love to play. For me, composing is like a child playing with Lego. It's just so much fun. And my wife comes in with a cup of coffee and says, "Good night," as they see in the morning. And I compose all night. In the morning, 8 in the morning, she'll come with a cup of coffee. "Good morning." And already? I just got started, And that's when a lot of ideas sort of come and I work on things. And then I write the violin and cello parts, and then I give them to my great soloists and I ask them to fine tune them. Like Esther may say something like, "Oh, well, you know what, you want this to go really fast, but you're crossing strings, it's impossible. You may have to change this or that." So they'll help me fine tune.
Do you write music for anyone else?
Do I used to. I don't any. I really focus just, I only write, perform, practice, and think of my own music for my own concerts now. Yeah. And that's an efficiency thing. That's not a, oh, well, I'm going to do, it's just an efficiency thing. And why I'm very careful about writing for other things is because I used to write, in order to pay for me to go and play in prisons, I used to write music and I used to give it to this company and they would take my music and sell it. And I thought, they would come up to me and say, "By Friday, we need 330-second slots." I could do that in my sleep. And then I gave it to them. And what I didn't realize is they could take that 30 seconds and put it anywhere. And they would put them in video games and things like that I would not approve of. So I stopped that immediately. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have like an idea that you come up with, or is it purely notes and?
No, it's usually an idea. Usually I'm going to write about something like redemption, or I have a song, Hero. I'll have a theme. The last song was a love song to my daughter with Down syndrome. I'll have a theme, and I'll be thinking about something, and then I'll be playing, and it just comes. And it could be 4 notes. That's exactly what I mean to say. It's like that, and then the floodgates open. And then what happens is very often I'll hit a wall, and I can't break through that wall. I put the piece away, go on tour, come back maybe 4 months later, and resurrect it, and then, oh, of course this is the way it should go, and it's just obvious. So, yes?
How do you feel when you walk out of prison?
How do I feel? Well, first of all, I thank God they let me out. So let's start there. One day they're not going to let him out, but that's a whole other issue. How do I feel? Okay, so I'm going to be honest. These men or these women are going through tough. Like one guy comes up to me and says, "Eric, we cry at your concert and then we put on a tough face again." And so I know that they're going through a lot, and they're ostracized, and they're judged, and they're all that. But the only thing I can tell people is before we start judging how bad they are, you should look at their history. Their background, some of them are so bad they're unrecognizable. You wouldn't think that that's a human upbringing, So we go in and we do all we can. We play the best we can. We give it our all. And they are so happy. Like, it is amazing. This one, I could tell you so many stories, but just to sort of keep it brief, I'll give you one idea. Like that one 15-year-old boy. He was sitting there, he was slouching when I walked in. I walked right up to him, saw him slouching, and I knew he was the leader in the room. I said, I'm giving you 30 seconds to sit up. You're not sitting up, I'm leaving. You know what? I'll give you your money back for what you paid to come into this concert, and I lose nothing because I'm losing thousands right now in order to perform for you. You think I'm going to perform for a kid that doesn't know how to sit up? Your choice. Well, that boy was sitting up within 5 seconds, and at the end of the show, he's hugging me, and he's talking about, can I hear the violin alone? So I know that we can go in there and God willing, move them and give them some sort of sense of humanity. I just walk out very humbled by that. I'll tell you one crazy story. I was standing beside the warden before the show, and because I'm in all black, I don't know, they don't know who I am, so they're walking by. This one guy, 22 years old, walks up to the warden and says, "Warden, what did I do so bad that you hate me so much that you're going to make me sit through a 2-hour violin show?" I said, "I don't want to sit through a 2-hour violin show either, except wait till you hear my violinist." Same kid at the end of the show comes up and hugs me, would not let go. He would not, and he says, "I'm changed." And he would not let go. And he said, "Thank you." And he's sobbing, "Thank you." I have no clue what he's really saying. I'm just holding him, right? And so when I look at that, and then I said, "How are you?" He said, "I just got sentenced." I said, "How did it go?" He said, "I got 3 lifetimes. And then I said, "Are you doing okay?" And he said, "Can't cry over spilt milk." And I'm just walking out of that prison thinking, when did his life become spilt milk? So it's very tough, very sad. A lot of the time I walk out and I just, I think I should go and, get a real job and just pretend that the world's okay, because sometimes you see so much tough stuff, But I'm very, very grateful. I'm very honored, first of all, to have these 3 extraordinary people playing my stuff, but very honored that I can go and play for the most vulnerable, forgotten people in the world and remind them of their humanity. I get so many letters from people that say that. I got a letter after the concert last night. I got in my car and there was an email waiting for me from one of the men that were at the show last night from the drug rehab center. He says, "I haven't felt this much joy in so long." And I think, oh, isn't that great? So I feel very happy that I can go in and do that. Friends, this next piece is a spiritual narrative. Now, I'm not going to come at this from a religious perspective because I want to focus more from the musical side of things. See, music and and why do I bring in spirituality? Because I spoke at the very beginning about the impact of music. And if I'm going to speak about the impact of music but not bring up music and spirituality, it's disingenuous. Music and spirituality have been married forever, regardless of what you believe regarding spirituality. And you can imagine where I play the gamut of spiritual beliefs. So why does music and spirituality get along so well? I think the most brilliant person to have lived is Bach. And Bach, on every page that he wrote music on, he wrote, "For God alone, for the greater glory of God." Well, why would he write that? He wrote that because he knew if he took something sublime, like a spiritual narrative, and put it with beauty, his music, then it would move the person in ways that nothing else can. So let's just sort of talk about spirituality and music, and let's divide them. Let's first talk about spirituality. I think spirituality is the highest intellectual and psychological topic that you can possibly dive into. Why? Because it means that you are necessarily doing a deep dive into topics that are not exactly obvious. Topics like, what happens when you die? That's a very serious question. We can't downplay it, religion's silly. Well, the greatest minds in history didn't think so. So maybe you know something they don't. Another very serious question, what does eternal life look like? I can't think of a more important question than that. And how we behave now, or how we think now, or our responses now to different things, does that have an effect on eternal life? Again, the greatest minds in history have dove into this and have written about it. It is a worthwhile topic to jump into. Okay, all that to say spirituality is of the highest topic. Let's leave that. Let's talk about music. I got a really fun story for you. It's a true story and it's a crazy story. And I was playing in Florida and they wanted to try a new thing. They didn't tell me they were going to try this new thing. They put all the gang members of one gang in one room. Not very smart, but that's what they did. Okay? And all these guys were about 6'10". They were giants. They were all ducking the door when they were walking, and I'm thinking, what do they feed these boys in this room? They're all huge. And so people ask me, Eric, in those cases, aren't you afraid? I am never afraid. Never. You know why I'm not afraid? Because everywhere I go, I bring my bodyguard right there, ladies and gentlemen. She's a lot tougher than she looks, that's for sure. There's one giant in the back at the end of the show. Says, I've never cried in my life. Why am I crying? Okay, most of us, even if we don't cry, we have had the sensation of tears come down because of anger, because of emotion, something. Never. This was the first time. Okay, why is he crying? Why is that boy at the very front at the beginning of the show? Why is he crying? Friends, when I tell you a story, the words go into your ears and into your brain downloads the information. Long before you even realize that you're listening to a story and you're making conclusions, your brain works that fast. That's called involuntary thinking. That is not what happens when the person is exposed. When we are exposed to beauty, beauty bypasses the brain and goes right to the soul. It goes right to that part that animates us. It goes right to the depth of our humanity. It bypasses all the abuse, all the betrayal, all the abandonment, all the neglect, and goes and elevates our humanity. That's what beauty does. So maybe it's the first time that that giant and this boy has ever felt that they were dignified enough to realize that they were worthy of goodness and mercy and humor, and redemption and forgiveness and joy and leisure and all the good things. And how does it manifest itself? Through tears. And so, when you combine the highest topic with something that has access to the soul, now you have something profound. This piece is called Panis Angelicus. Panis is bread, Angelicus is angels. This is the bread of angels. Angels don't need bread, but angels have a hunger for something far more than bread. They have a hunger for the one who created them out of perfect love. I love that. I love my children, but I don't love them perfectly because I'm not a perfect man. But our Lord has an encounter with these angels. They're seeking his perfect union, his perfect encounter. Goes on to say that we have that same hunger for a divine and human encounter. Now that's beautiful. The most euphoric expression of the human condition is not the better car, the more money, the early retirement. The most euphoric expression is to love and to be loved, but not so easy. Because to love necessarily means to sacrifice. But to love perfectly means to be willing to die for that person, which makes Christianity a very interesting concept, that our Lord would have done that, die on that little cross for any one of us. That's how my daughter with Down syndrome is worthy of that. That's how dignified she is. It's really quite profound. Okay, so that's one thing, to be loved. It's another thing, though, with respect to love, but to be loved is tough. Because when you think of the concept of being loved, all of a sudden, if my wife says, Eric, I love you, in my mind, all the reasons why she should, ever since I was 2, all the things that I've ever done wrong, from then until now, is right at me. And what's the verdict? The verdict is you don't deserve your wife's love. Guilty and true. And so, except my wife, friends, doesn't love me because I do great things and I avoid bad things. Those are good things to do. That's not why she loves. Love transcends that. And so, friends, there are many people who are walking around in this world that have never felt the sensation of love. They felt admiration, they felt respect, and I wonder that even myself sometimes. Have I ever experienced what it is to be loved? And so, friends, the author wanted to get all this. And when I'm with my inmate friends, I tell them, you are and you always have been worthy of love. We're thinking about it wrong. So, friends, the author wanted to get this, so what did he do? He wrote a poem. Why a poem? Because this poem has lasted 1,000 years. Why does anything last 1,000 years? Because it has meaning to the individual and meaning to civilization. If it didn't have that meaning, it wouldn't last. Absolutely wouldn't last. But he wrote it as a poem because the words to the poem stimulate the brain. The beauty of the poetry uplift the soul. And that connection of the intellectual stimulation and the movement of the very person gives you true experience as humanly possible to what Panis Angelicus is. This is Panis Angelicus. The words are written 1,000 years ago, and the music I just finished a few years ago. Here we go. we have one more piece for you this afternoon. And if you have any friends that you think might enjoy this concert, we're doing it again tonight. I think at 6:30. Mary, is that right? Yes. Yes, okay. Great. Okay. So friends, just before we close, just a couple of logistics. Really grateful for your generosity with regards to the kids. On the way out, I have CDs at the table, okay? And we're running a special. Usually I charge $300 a CD. I've never gotten it. Friends, the way my life works is you take what you want, you give what you want at the back table. If you enjoyed the music, if you have a CD player in your car, you take a CD and take one of each. There's 6 different ones. I was fortunate to go and record and perform with the Slovak National Symphony Orchestra. I did 3 there. I did a piano, violin, cello, and a vocal. That's 6. Please feel free to take them. I'm also on Spotify and all those things. Plus there's a card at the back that has a link. If you download that link, you'll have all 6 of my CDs digitally, okay? And you know, it's again, take what you want and donate what you want. I'm very, very grateful. Every dollar you donate goes towards me performing in prison. Friends, if you're in between jobs, if you're retired and you're on fixed income, you don't have the money, don't worry about it. Take the music. Don't leave a donation. Just take the music. I feel so strongly about my music. It's a lot better in your home than it is in my home. So take it and listen to it. Now, if you can't give because you give to other organizations, stop giving to them. Okay, maybe that was a little aggressive. I didn't really want to say it. She told me to. Friends, we have one more, sorry, just before we close, I would like to introduce these 3 extraordinary people and tremendous, tremendous musicians. Our wonderful violinist today is Esther Kim. And the wonderful singer is Friends, this last piece is a love song. So I've been married 30 years to a beautiful, loving, supportive wife, and this is a love song to our daughter with Down syndrome. Now, I just want to tell you a bit of a silly story. It's a true story. It's a ridiculous story. We go as a family and we play in nursing homes. Okay? And it's a lot like this. It looks just like this. Except it doesn't sound like this. You see, my children like to play, but they don't love it. So they practice 5 minutes a year, and it sounds like it, okay? So we go and play in nursing homes. Why nursing homes? Because they're deaf. And it's because we sound terrible, and they can't hear a note we're playing. Perfect. So one day, my son, I have a son 19 years old, and he likes to lift his weights. It's February, it's freezing cold in Kentucky. I said, okay, let's go. Everybody, we're getting in the car, we're going to the nursing home. My son in February comes down with a cutoff t-shirt. A cutoff t-shirt, of all the things. I said, that's nice. Cutoff t-shirt, I don't know, maybe you want to put on a coat. It's freezing cold outside. The knucklehead tells me, he talks like Rocky Balboa, you know, from the movie Rocky. He tells me, oh, no, Dad, no, you see, because when you got it, you gotta flaunt it. I'm thinking, flaunt what, you knucklehead? We're going to a nursing home. They're not even gonna be able to see you. So we get in the car, we go and we play, and at one point, he sounded so bad, I don't even think he was playing the same song I was playing. Except the problem is, I'm very visible. I can't give him a dirty look like, hey, get with the program, because everybody would see me. So I thought, you know what, just calm down, everything's gonna be fine, nobody can hear it, you're the musician, you hear the mistakes, nobody else does, and he's playing like he's Yo-Yo Ma. So anyway, you know who I fooled? Nobody. You know how I know? Because there was a lady at the back. I said, ladies and gentlemen, we played, they clapped, we played, they clapped, and then I said, we have one song left. This lady at the back could not contain herself. She yells out, thank God. And that's when I knew I fooled nobody. So I turned to my son and I said, son, I love you. And he said, oh, I know, Dad, I know. I said, but you sounded terrible. I said, maybe you hit, 5% of the notes, and you were near the tune that they were supposed to be hit. And he tells me, oh, I know, Dad, but when I was playing, did you see my muscles? They were in. Have you ever prayed for your children in their late teens, early 20s, and said, dear God, give them the gift of common sense, and there was no evidence that your prayer was being answered? That's my life. So friends, we left that concert, we went through the hospital to get to the car, and there was a woman who was weeping. She came out of a hospital room, put a chair down, and was weeping. And I told my children, I said, that woman's going through trauma. I said, we're going to honor her privacy. Which when I look back, was a real shameful thing to say. Isn't that amazing that in one sentence I taught my children, when somebody's broken, do nothing. That's what I said. That's what I said. So they all listened, except for my daughter with Down syndrome. She didn't get the memo. She walked right up to this woman and crawled in her lap. Now for you and I, that's easy. For her, it's not easy because she has poor muscle tone. Like when my daughter, she walks heavy because she doesn't have the muscle control and likes to walk graceful. Her tongue hangs out of her mouth because she doesn't have the muscle tone in her mouth, in her face, to keep her tongue in her mouth. Okay, so her muscles, it's always an issue. She was climbing, determined. She climbed up in the woman's lap, put her arms around the woman's neck, and put her forehead to the woman's forehead, didn't know who she was, and started to weep just as hard as the woman. Can you picture that encounter? Okay, friends. You have to picture it. You know why? Because that was perfect human compassion. Perfect. Why? It was perfect for 4 reasons. The first, my daughter didn't climb into that woman's lap and say, ma'am, let me tell you how tough it is to have Down syndrome. I can't even walk properly. I can't say a sentence. Nobody comes over to talk to me because I can't talk. I'm going to have to live off my parents my whole life because I'll never be able to live on my own. In fact, the joke in our family is when we're empty nesters, the 3 of us are going to have a ball. She didn't do that. My daughter didn't go and complain about her ailments. All she did was weep for the woman. It was perfect. This is a girl that will never finish a sentence in this life. The second reason why it was perfect, because it was exactly what you and I were meant to be to each other. Except you and I are a little too sophisticated and guarded. We don't show those higher aspects of our human vulnerability. The third reason why it was perfect was because my daughter didn't put her hands in her pockets and say, are my friends going to think this is cool? Because if I jump in her lap and my friends don't think it's cool, I'm not going to jump in her lap. You and I suffer from the disease of what society thinks and what our friends think. In fact, to the point where, can you and I even make a decision without considering what other people think? Yet my daughter does not suffer from that whatsoever. And the last reason why it was perfect was my daughter saw a problem and she did something about the problem. Very often, we'll spitball the problems. We'll look at a woman like that and say, why doesn't somebody help that woman? Why doesn't somebody do something about the crime? Why doesn't somebody do something about the illiteracy? Thinking you want to do something about the illiteracy? Find somebody who can't read and teach them to read. There, we've done something about the illiteracy. There's no they. Why don't they? There's no they. They is you and I in our brokenness, using the gifts that we've been given to do what we can to make life better for other people around us. That's the they. We don't have to be perfect to be charitable. We just have to want to do it and be willing to sacrifice to do it. I did not hug the woman because if I hug the woman, I'll make her feel uncomfortable. Aren't I smart? I let my perception of everybody else's impression of me stop me from doing the greater human good. It did not stop my daughter. So, who is truly disabled, me or my daughter? I'm walking by the woman and I'm thinking, I'll take my kids to ice cream. I'm thinking ice cream in the middle of this woman's brokenness. You know what I'm feeling for the woman? Nothing. And all I could think about was, when did I die? You know, friends, I play in movie stars' homes. You know what's interesting about playing in their homes? Everybody in the audience wants an encounter with the movie star. Do you know why? Because the movie stars are easy to love. It's that good-looking girl, it's that good-looking guy, it's the person with the perfect body because they're athletes. It's the guy who's the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It's the guy who, lights up the room with all of his humor and all of his charisma. They're easy to love. A lot of people are easy to love. And then there's a whole group of people that are tough to love, like my daughter. You want to love my daughter? Come to my house. You'll sit down and you'll do two things. You'll color and you'll have a tea party. She can do those two things. And then you'll say, oh, well, I should talk to her. But she won't talk back because she can't. And then after 5 minutes, you'll be bored and you'll want to leave. But her, she will be over the moon with joy just because you're there. You don't have to be a violinist or a cellist or a singer or a composer. You just need to show up. You can make isn't that amazing that you can make my daughter and many other people's lives euphoric just by showing up? Do you know how many people show up? Nobody. It's not because they're bad people. It's that we forgot what we mean to each other. Friends, when was the last time you or I became euphoric just because someone visited us? Again, we're too sophisticated to become joyful over such little things. If we all had just a little bit of Down syndrome, what a great world this would be. Charity is always the right thing. But we all have our own sense of what charity is. You know what? Let's be very clear on what charity is. The highest form of human living is a life lived by being charitable to others. Absolutely no mistake. But what does it mean to be charitable? Charity hurts. Charity hurts. I have 3 heroes. I'm going to mention one, Mother Teresa. Why? Because she went and picked up bodies that were absolutely abhorrent to anything sensible in the human condition. There was nothing desirable about having an encounter with the people that were dying with maggots and the odor of different things on their body, and as they were dying and they looked deformed and there was nothing attractive whatsoever. Yet she killed something in her, the desire to have embraced beautiful people. She killed that in her to see the image of God in those people and to see the higher dignity in those people, since she embraced them. I love her for that. And so I pray all the time, give me the grace when I go into these prisons to see you in them, Lord. It's really, really fascinating that she was willing to do that. I have a friend that when I went and played in death row, he was an inmate. He would always carry my bags. He got 28 years. And he got out recently. And he said to me, Eric, when I was in prison, he's a big guy. He said, I got into 600 fights. And he told me that while we were on the phone call, and I thought, good, because now I can pretend I'm a tough guy, and I'm not near him, that's good. I said to him, I suppose you think that makes you tough. I said, you found 600 people weaker than you and you beat them up. That's great. That's grade school bullying. I said, you want tough? Go back to that prison. Find the guy that you hate the most. Find a guy that you dislike the most. The guy that rubs you the wrong way. The guy that you can't stand to be around. And go and befriend him. Oh, I can't do that. He's weird. Yes, he's weird. You know why he's weird? He's weird because he suffers from things that you are blessed not to suffer from. Nobody asked you to heal him. Go and be charitable to him and sit with him. And if he likes to read, buy him a book. If he's in a wheelchair, push him around. If he needs toiletries, you buy him that toiletries. But after that hour, every other day, you sit with him for an hour and you make sure he feels as though you're his best friend. My friend can't do that. You know why? He's not tough enough. Charity hurts. It's not easy. Please don't think I've got it down because I'm talking. Just because I can hold the microphone doesn't mean I've mastered these things. I'm working on them. My daughter's mastered them. I have not. You know, it's just so interesting. When I talk to the inmates, I say, you want charity? Call that mother that abandoned you. Call that father that couldn't say enough horrible things to you. Because when he was doing that, I feel sorry for him because he was never talking to you. He was talking to himself. Call him and forgive him. I'm not going to forgive him. I hate him. Yes, that's a very normal and natural human response. Don't let your human response get in the way of higher things. The higher act is to be charitable. It always is and always will be the greatest act we can do as human beings, is to be charitable to one another. Friends, this last song is a love song. I wrote this piece. My daughter was born with a bad heart. Many Down syndrome children have heart issues. And so my daughter had massive surgery. We didn't think she was going to live. It was the 5.5 longest hours of my life. I wrote this piece when I was in the waiting room and she was in the operating room. This is a love song for me to my little girl. This piece is called Here I Am.
Now be still.
be at the back. We look forward to shaking your hand. Thank you so much for coming. And it helps us tonight if you call someone to come. Thank you.